I'm here at a racetrack, and today we are driving the Taycan versus the Carrera 4S. So here's the thing. There are several layers to what's going through my mind right now. Before I do that, let's break down what the day is going to be like. It's going to be a couple of hours. There's going to be 3 sections. It's going to be launch control. Not too interested in that. I might pass that up to do a little bit more B-roll filming. Then there's going to be the autocross and the lead follow. And this is where the layers of interestingness occur. So the lead follow is going to be on the big track. In general, when you're on a bigger track, while you're going faster, the turns are wider than an autocross handling circuit and the track is bigger and whatnot. So in terms of scale and perspective, things feel like they're happening at a slower pace. So things happen over a longer timeline. You're tracking in and tracking out of your clipping point and your exit strategy and all these things, they're happening stretched out. So things feel a little bit slower, but it's definitely going to give a level of understanding of weight transfer and handling and whatnot. But the thing is, my expectations are low, not for any negative reasons, but because the Taycan is a 4.5 seater sort of cue car. It's like a mini Panamera in a sense. So for them to be comparing it to the 911 is a little bit, not odd, but I feel like there's something up their sleeve. They wouldn't do it if they weren't confident. But it's going to be a bit of a task evaluating the Taycan in and of itself without being overshadowed by the 911. On the handling course, this is going to be even more so of an issue because the 911 undoubtedly is going to outperform the Taycan on the handling course. It's nimble, right? Like that nimbleness is what you need on the handling course. But in both of these scenarios, for different reasons, it's going to be very interesting to see how the Taycan handles. One being an electric vehicle, I don't know if that makes much of a difference because all the torque and all the power is there. But being an over 5,000 pound car, being a 4-door, 4.5 seater, and the ironic part being the batteries being laid down low. Now, for one, this is going to, I expect, give a mid-engine feel. So it'd be very interesting to see how it handles its weight. It's also going to be interesting to see how the chassis responds with an air suspension car. That's going to be another thing that it has to answer for. The ironic thing to me is most electric cars usually put their batteries to the back, and Porsche, being the master of the rear weight biased car, is putting it along the bottom. Then there's the challenge for me, which is going to be having to report on the experience, also follow the driving line, and also make all this up on the fly, because I did not plan for any of this. But it sounds like we're about to start in about 5 minutes. I am psyched. All right, first up is autocross.
Welcome to the autocross.
That's my instructor.
Doing performance driving, what you're doing all afternoon. I'm definitely sitting a little closer and answer to those controls. I sit upright a little bit, a little different than driving to the grocery store. Follow my tracks like I'm leaving tracks in the snow. I'll put you on.
Okay, so what's shocking about this is the fact that, especially with the autocross, right, it being mostly a handling thing, right, shifting weight left and right, the braking, the transfer weight and everything, this is over 5,000 pounds. I drove an M5 on this track actually a few months back, and that clearly felt heavier. This is handling its weight in a way that's significant. The fact that the batteries are all down low, like I had said before, as opposed to being stuck in the back, it's flat. Like there is nothing, once you know it's electric, that's it, it's over. Just drive it like a regular car. This is fantastic. It's fantastic. It's not a car meant for the track, but if you happen to take a wrong turn somewhere and end up on a track, it'll take care of itself. And it's the most peaceful, aggressive lap you'll ever do because it's quiet. It's like this is just strolling through a meadow. This is terrible footage because I'm just babbling. If I had a moment to talk over the radio, which I didn't because you got to follow directions, I would have been left entirely speechless. Not a word came out of my mouth. All right, future me here, now that I've had some time to process and gather my brain after that weird blend of speed and silence. To back up a bit, I think there are three major points that create passion in a performance vehicle: handling dynamics, power delivery, and noise. And let's face it, noise is, as impractical of a thing as that is, a car's noise is like a person's voice. It gives personality, it gives character. You can have a voice for radio, and another person can have a voice for nuclear fallout. The Taycan, I think, manages to make two of these 3 points completely irrelevant, a non-issue. With regards to the power delivery, we talked a little bit about that in our previous road test review, but with the handling dynamics, that's where things start to get a little bit more interesting. You probably already know this, but Porsche has their dynamic chassis control or active balance, and it's being used in the Taycan. It's also being used in the 911. To be honest with you, that's an option I probably wouldn't get in a 911 for a number of reasons. The chassis is already set up to handle. The weight is low down like the Taycan, but it's also lightweight to begin with. But on the Taycan, it's a different story. It starts to prove itself more, or it starts to make its presence more known. In a car that's, don't know if I mentioned this, 5,000 pounds, and on air suspension, having something that creates a flatter ride, it's not just about it being flat. It starts to change the perception of how the weight's being managed. And that ultimately translates to being relatively more responsive and giving the driver more confidence, at least for now. In the next section, we're going to be going to the North Course, which is going to be longer straights, so higher speeds, wider turns, and we're going to be putting it directly head-to-head with the 992 C4S. So that's where I think we're going to start to really see just how far this clever balancing act takes us. So how do I look?
Right out onto the track. We want to get set up on this right-hand side to see lots of braking has happened over here.
Okay, so obviously having a toddler in baby seat's eye view of the windshield isn't exactly best for translating what's happening on the track. But without question, the 911 was miles ahead of the Taycan in terms of handling and generally navigating the track. It feels more like an extension of you, and you spend less cognitive energy thinking about what the car is doing. With the Taycan, you start to feel more and more like you're reining in some weight. One of the party pieces of the Taycan is the fact that the brakes don't wear very much over time because a lot of the braking is being done by the e-motors unless you're slamming on the brakes like we did on the back street. This doesn't translate well, at least for me it didn't feel like on the track compared to standard disc brakes. The disc brakes feel a little bit more even across. That plus on the Taycan you feel the nose dip more and the 911 seats hold you a bit better. This whole thing is just, the Taycan is really feeling like a 5-seater GT car. And that's not really a surprise, it's just more apparent when you put it head-to-head with a 911. But there is something to be said about that comparison even being made. You're never going to see a hybrid Camry being compared to a Supra. The fact that this comparison is being made is a demonstration of how they're thinking about what's being made, not what is being made. You're not going to see a 2-speed gearbox or air suspension or the Taycan's braking system put in an E911, but you might see a 6-speed gearbox eventually being developed and made bespoke for some of these cars. It's an exercise of principles. That being said, I did like the little thump that second gear gives you on the back straight. It's amazing to be able to take these things and put them out on the track like this. It's amazing to experience what these minds are developing when they're in the right minds. But that all being said, if you just can't stand electric motors, you can take solace in the fact that Porsche started research and development into synthetic fuels. So while fossil fuels might be a short future, internal combustion might be here to stay. All in all, if this car is at all on your radar, nothing competes. No one's thinking about electric vehicles like Porsche is, except maybe Rimac, but Porsche has a stake in that anyway. But as a theme, I don't think the future is as grim as we may have perceived. And it's all about perspective in the end anyway, right?